Okay, I don't know who's on the screen right now, probably the last person that talked. So probably you just saw Isabel, our marketing lady for everything, who was so kind to write all the emails and invitations. I would say we wait a few more minutes. As always, not everybody comes exactly on time. From the names I say, we are pretty much international today. Still people coming in. So I'll give it until the clock strikes 16:02. Last chance to refill your coffee, open the beer, depends on the time zone. Hi. First one in the chat, nice. From Cologne, great. We were thinking about this beautiful city because of one of the following sessions in November. We will not do it on the 11th of November, because of Carnival, because of you guys from Cologne. We will do it 1 week later. Invitation will follow. Good morning, good afternoon. So, hi. I think everybody had a fair chance to join. Who comes later doesn't matter, because Marco, our main speaker with the main content, will follow in a few minutes. So we still have some time. So welcome everybody from Munich and later from Düsseldorf, from Marco. And yeah, I'm Lucas, a cloud solutions architect at Console. I will be your voice today because, as always with webinars, you just have the chat and the question function and a little poll this time. And Marco won't be able to see everything. So I will read the questions from chat from wherever, whenever it suits the talk. Everything that we cannot answer in the talk, we will answer in the end, hopefully in a good discussion. Yes. So, but first of all, let's introduce Marion from IBM, who was so kind to promote this session to bring us all together. IBM, a great partner of ours. Marion, stage is yours.
Hi, Lucas. Welcome and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone joining. I'm happy to be here with you today. And the reason for being here is that I'm part of the hybrid cloud build team here in Germany. And we are supporting our partners with joint workshops, and I'm going to show a little slide to you around that because the mission of our team is to to support and build together with our partners, our IBM partners, and as Lucas said, Console is one of our great partners, and we usually do that with two different kind of engagements. We are supporting community work and supporting initiatives like Call for Code, one of the biggest hackathons that has been initiated by IBM. We are doing a lot of developer advocacy and building in the areas of hybrid cloud and AI topics. And this is based on our three pillars: code, content, and community. And with respect to code, you can find a lot of code snippets and how-tos and tutorials at our website, developer.ibm.com. So if you haven't had the chance to look at that site, please take a look. It's really worth it. We are constantly providing new assets on there. And also we are heavily connected with the OpenShift World Tour. And that is basically where Console and we come to really great together, right, around the OpenShift platform. And on top of that, right, on top of all the community work and advocacy work we do, we are now, as a hybrid cloud build team, joining in with our partners and supporting you building MVPs and building POCs and doing skilling and enablement sessions and joint workshops as the one today. So we are interested in going to market with you together. And if anyone is interested in joining us as a partner or as or building an MVP or a solution together with us, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. And that's all I have to say for today. I'm really, really curious about what Marco has to say in a bit. So over to you, Lucas, again.
Oh, thanks for back to me. Yeah, that's all Marion has to say for today. If you get to know her better as a partner, you know, she's got so much more interesting stuff to say. So follow up on her invitation and give her a ring. But now with no further ado, Marco, you've got the main stage. You've got the really good information for today, right?
Thank you, Lucas. And let me share my screen. So for those of you who want to follow along, or if you have technical difficulties reading the slides, I'm going to post a link in the chat. That is the GitHub repository for the code I'm going to present, and you will also find the slides right there. So we have a little question or polling predefined for this session, and while I am presenting myself, talking a little bit of myself, maybe Lucas, Isabel, you can start the polling, so I get the results when I'm finished with this part. Who am I? My name is Marco Bungard. In a former life, I studied bioinformatics and computer science in Jena. Then I was a PhD student in Kassel. And since 2018, I'm a software engineer at Console. Whenever you find this little penguin right here, combined with the name Turing85, you can be sure that this is me. So if you want to contact me, Twitter, GitHub, Bitbucket, Stack Overflow, look for Turing85 with this penguin and you can contact me. Besides Quarkus, the other interests I have as a developer is Keycloak and GraalVM. As you might know, GraalVM is one of the foundations for Quarkus, and thus I'm interested in GraalVM, and for application security and OIDC provisioning, I'm interested in Keycloak. Quick question to the moderators, Isabel and Lucas. I see the polling, but I cannot answer something.
Oh, you want to answer? Then we should have started this in the beginning. This is just for the audience, not for the discussion panel. I'm sorry, but you can tell us your experiences and your preferences, of course.
My preferences. I don't have hard preferences. I have soft preferences. So normally, if I have the option, I take Quarkus over Java EE and Spring Boot. But I'm happy to work with either of them. And as we will see in my day-to-day work, I pretty much use everything listed here: Docker, Minikube, Minishift, and Kubernetes OpenShift. So let me continue to the next slide. So Quarkus, we are going to talk about Quarkus and its dev mode today. What is that amazes me about Quarkus? Quarkus describes itself as a Kubernetes native Java stack tailored for OpenJDK hotspot. And it's comparatively lightweight. If we look at the memory footprint, it gets even more lightweighted in this way when we are going to talk about native compilation. So we can write microservices that actually only use 10 to 20 megabytes of RAM. We are up and running in a few minutes. One of the key concepts of Quarkus, you will see this when you visit the website, quarkus.io, is developer joy. So developer joy is in the center of Quarkus, and the dev mode we are going to look at today is one of the core pillars, at least in my opinion, for this developer joy. Exactly, that's what's listed here. Again, the dev mode enables us to write code in a tight feedback loop with testing, writing code, running tests again, writing more code, and so on and so on. With Quarkus, we have a curated list of dependencies, best of breed. At the beginning, Quarkus started in, I think, 2019. The dependencies were quite limited. Over the time, the dependencies were got got broader and broader. Today you can find dependencies for almost everything you desire, be it S3 storage, admin CLI, admin tools for Keycloak, and so on and so on. And the app restarts and starts within 1 milliseconds. The ones of you who use Spring Boot may be familiar with the effect that an application may take tens of seconds or even minutes to start. Normally, we don't have this problem with Quarkus. So is the polling done? Where can I see the results? Question to Isabel and or Lucas.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to mute Isabel. I think something fell from my table.
Okay.
Yes, the polling is done. Let me see if I can show you the results. Yes, the results should now be visible to everybody. Okay,
most of us are around 50% using Spring Boot, 46% Java EE, 31% Quarkus, and 38% others. Most of you use Docker, some Minikube, and more using Kubernetes, OpenShift, and Minikube. That's interesting. Okay, so let's take a look at the cloud native stack or cloud native development. In the early stages, at least that's my opinion, how it should run. When we bootstrap the project and we are not quite sure which dependencies we are going to use, which technologies we are going to use, I normally develop locally. So no Docker involved, no OpenShift, Kubernetes involved, just me on my machine. So setting up configuration, setting up my dependencies, maybe the database connection here and there. Then as the technology stack gets more stable and we go into active development, so developing the core logic of our application, I normally move to Docker-based development and Docker Compose-based development, so that we all have all our dependencies, for example, the database, OIDC provider, messaging the systems deployed in a Docker Compose stack. And in the last stages, when the application is mostly done and we are only fixing some bugs or adding new features, the perfect world would be that we can directly develop in our platform where we are going to deploy to, be it Kubernetes, OpenShift, or something running in the IBM cloud. So this is how it should be. And today we want to take a look how we can achieve this with the Quarkus dev mode. So what are we going to do today? The project, so the code is nothing spectacular. It's quite simple, and it should be simple because we are going to focus on the dev mode, not the code itself. We start by developing an application locally. And as we develop, we are going to move through these 3 stages. So we are going to move to Docker at one point. And at another point, we are going to finish by running our application in development mode in an OpenShift cluster deployed on the IBM cloud. If you're interested in the IBM cloud, feel free to try it for yourself. Down here, you have a link where you can register for the cloud and play around a little bit. So code examples, as I've shared in the chat, can be found in GitHub, and you will also find the slides right there. And keep in mind, the commits and messages are meant to as a step-by-step guide. So if you want to follow along later on, or if you want to see how I did some certain things, you can look in the commit messages and see the comments and the code changes. So you can follow along with what I did. So, and that's for the slides. That's all I have. The rest will be more or less live code presentation. So, as I said, code is nothing spectacular. This is mostly a bootstrapped application, as you can download it from the Quarkus website. So if you go to code.quarkus.io, you can click together your little application and download it. I did it beforehand for this application I'm going to show. And this is mostly such an application. I added some dependencies in the POMs. Some of them are important or were important, so I can deploy to the cloud. The parts that are important for the development mode, we will discuss while we are going along. So what does our little application do? We are writing a REST API, and for the beginning, we just have one endpoint, and it returns a string, hello IBM. So when I start developing, I normally start the dev mode. Let me start it in the terminal. Right here, -mvnw -p dev, Quarkus dev. And hopefully I don't have a typo in this, and the application should start up. So what this does is it builds my application. I see the port 5005 is in use. Let me close this one really quickly. I think that came from 5005. Okay. K9S. I think I still have a port forward to the cluster open. Namespaces. Oh. K9S. No, come on. Sorry for the little hiccup. I want to go to the IBM cluster. I want to log in with K9S. And I should. Okay, right now I'm not able to connect. I will fix this later. And for the time being, let me look whether I can fix the port forward so we can have the debugging enabled. It's going to complain again. I'm going to switch the port. Yes, it is. -d debug equals 5006. So it's running on a different port right now. And we should see our application start up. Exactly. The application was now built and it started up. The interesting part is, okay, it seems like the web port is also in use. Then I will have to fix this up right now. Please give me a second and excuse the delay.
Yeah, I think that's my fault. I made fun of the demo gods earlier. I sent a picture and not a kitten picture, so yes, I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I just have to get the login command to my cluster. And
I guess that is why we are doing it live, right?
Exactly. K9S. Now I should be able to log in. That doesn't look too good. Ah, it does. Show me my port forwards. There are no port forwards. ls of type 8080. Ah, there it is. I see what I did. Docker ps, Docker stop. I started the deployment in Docker already, and this is blocking the pods. So let me just stop my pods right here. This is stop Docker stop A1. This should stop this pod, and now we should be able to run the application. Please excuse this little hiccup. Oh, let me take this out of the picture, and we should see that the application now is starting up. That's a problem when you're jumping around in environments. So now the application is started up, and Quarkus is telling us, okay, I'm running on port 8080. I can verify that the port is running by setting up a curl command. That's the wrong one. Curl. As I said before, we only have a single endpoint, that is the greetings endpoint. So you can get the greeting from this endpoint, get of API/greetings. That's what I'm doing right here. And okay, we are getting our string hello IBM. Nothing too spectacular. The nice thing now is that we can start modifying our code. For example, hello audience. Notice that I'm just typing in my IDE. I'm doing nothing else. Now I'm going to resubmit this request. We notice it takes a little bit longer, and we now get hello audience. That's our changed code. When we look at the deployment here in Quarkus, we see right here that Quarkus noticed that the code has changed, triggered a restart, and redeployed itself in, what was it? I think 1.035 seconds. So every time I'm going to change my code right here. Hey. We see now Quarkus is doing nothing, but as soon as I resubmit a request, Quarkus notices, okay, there was a code change. I have to recompile, redeploy, and run the new code. So here we have the possibility to develop locally and write the code as we desire, directly see the results. So that's what I meant by tight testing loops. But we can do even more than only this. So let me go forward one commit. As you can see right here, we are just using plain text. And instead of using plain text, I'd like to return JSON objects. Yeah. Right now in my dependencies, I have nothing that can support JSON. So I have to add the dependency, have to add my data models. That's all what's happening in this commit right here. Let's take a look. We are going to add the dependency to deserialize objects as JSON in responses. And we are going to add a greeting object and modify our endpoint to use this greeting object. So I'm going to check out this version. As we can see right here, we now have a greeting class. We set the salutation, we set the name. Greeting class, again, nothing too spectacular, just a simple POJO. What I can do now is I'm going to resubmit my call. So I shouldn't ask for text plain, but for anything really. So, and now we see we are getting back a JSON response again. Quarkus redeployed our application, fetched the dependency needed, and we can now start using JSON responses. So this means we can not only change the code, we can also change, for example, the dependencies that we are using. We can change the configuration file. Everything is detected by the development node, and everything is reflected on the next request, which, if you ask me, is pretty nice. So let's take it one step further. And instead of just using JSON, we are now going to add a database to our deployment. So first thing I normally do is I set up my database in a local deployment, so in a Docker Compose file. That's what we are doing right here. We are just setting up a Postgres database, and for convenience, a pgadmin4 in case we are not using IntelliJ or don't have a database tool installed. So we have a database tool in our deployment. And let us deploy this application. Let me take a quick look. I'm going to shut down the current deployment. That should be done in a second. And let us deploy our database and our pgadmin4. So We are now in a transition from developing locally to developing with Docker. Since we need a dependency, we move it to Docker, so we don't have the pain to install a Postgres database locally. Or if we have one installed locally, we can deploy this database right here without having collision with our local database. And as I said, pgadmin 4 for administrative purposes if we need it. So that was this commit. And the next commit is adding the actual database dependencies to Quarkus. So again, we are going to add a dependency to our POM file, 3 dependencies to be exact. We are going to use Hibernate ORM for the database connection. We are going to use the Postgres driver, and we are going to use a Spring Data JPA. So Quarkus has a Spring Data JPA compatibility layer, so you can still write your interfaces against CRUD repository or JPA repository, and Quarkus will generate the queries in the background. So that's what we are going to use dependency-wise. For the application configuration, we are going to set up our database. I like to set up the base configuration so that if I start the app locally, it works out of the box. That's why we find here a database port of 15432. If we look at the Docker Compose file, we can see right here that we are redirecting the original port 5432 from the container to the local port 15432, so we don't have a collision with a locally running database if we have one. And we also set up the database connection with username, password. And let us check out this revision. And hopefully, we should be able to run the application. So let me take a quick look so I'm not forgetting anything. Exactly. With the database, we also needed a schema. And I like to include Flyway as standalone plugin in my development routine, since normally we don't want the database schema to be created automatically. Especially not in production. We want to have control over when the database schema is migrated and where. That's the second part added right here. So before we start our application, we have to execute our schema migration. Just to show it quickly to you, the database schema is not too complex either. We only have a single table with a primary key ID and name and salutation, so we can persist salutations in our database. So we are going to migrate our schema. And when the migration is done, I think that's a good point to show you how pgadmin is working. Localhost 8091, that support pgadmin in Docker is running. It may take a second for pgadmin to load, but then we can verify pgadmin4@pgadmin.org, and password is pgadmin4. So that's a database running in our Docker Compose environment. We can now verify that the tables were created in the correct database. It's our app greeting. We have our schemas right here. We have 2 tables, one Flyway table, one greeting table, and the greeting table, when we show the data, has exactly the ID column, name, and salutation column. So setup is done. Let's see how Quarkus reacts to these changes. So we are going to ignore this error and see if Quarkus fixes it. This could be the only part in this talk where we are forced to restart the development mode. Sometimes Quarkus doesn't like it when we add the database connection on the fly, but let's see whether the demo got with us. So I want to store a greeting for me, name Marco, come on, Marco, and salutation, hi. And we have to post this one, -x post. And I forgot the quotation. And okay, sadly it did not work. So now we have to restart the dev mode once.
Do you know why it's not working?
Sometimes it's really picky about the dependencies, especially the database dependency to pick up and to load all dependencies necessary to connect to the database. But as far as I know, the database is the only point where this is an issue.
Okay.
So now our application is running. Let's try this again. Let's again try to persist a new salutation. And this time it seems to work. Okay, let's see what the implementation is actually doing right here. So we just called this endpoint right here, create new greeting, and we are just calling repository.save. We did not see a response since I did not instruct curl to give us the response, but we can post it second. Exactly, that's a problem right here, -v. Unsupported media type. Exactly, we have to tell curl that we want to receive a content type of application JSON. So, and now we should see exactly salutation, hello, name IBM. This was persisted. Likewise, let me repersist the salutation for Marco and hi, and this was also persisted. We can now take a look in our database and we will see indeed view all rows that we have 2 entries to persist our data to database. Now we have other endpoints to get all greetings, get a single greeting, delete greetings. For example, I could now say I want to get all greetings. Normally we do this by just calling get on the resource endpoint, so API greetings, and indeed we are getting our greetings. So now I would like to show you a little bit more about Quarkus with the aspect of testing. Exactly. Quarkus comes, default application comes with one predefined test. And what I've written here are tests to fully cover my endpoints. So for example, when I get a greeting, I think that's still the old test. That's good. That is going to fail. No, it's not going to fail. So here we are going to get a default greeting for a user. For example, we are now getting a greeting from John Doe. The application is written in a way so that if we don't have a greeting persisted for a person, it will generate a default greeting, always hello and then the name. Then we have a little bit more complex test here where we are going to persist some greeting. After persisting the greeting, we are going to fetch this greeting, and after the greeting is fetched, is deleted. And the last test is persist multiple greetings, get all greetings, and then delete all greetings again. So why am I telling you this? Because the dev mode of Quarkus provides us with a continuous testing environment. As you can see right here, it says test pros, press R to resume. If I now press R, the tests are automatically run. 1, 2, 3, come on. Run the rest of the tests, please. And I see all tests all 3 tests are passing. Yeah. Nice thing about this is, now let me go into the endpoint and say, no, for the default greeting, I don't want to say hello, I want to say hi. Yeah. Remember, I have a test that covers this case. And now in the background, the tests were already run. Yeah. So Quarkus again detected, okay, here's a change in the code. I have to rerun the tests, and I see here, okay, you expected the hello, but the actual is hi. Yeah. So now I can say, okay, which test is it? It is greeting resource Java line 34. Let me jump to this line. Yeah, I have changed the default salutation to hi. Again, I'm doing nothing. Quarkus detected the change itself, rerun the tests, and now I see, okay, all my tests are green again. So we have a tight feedback loop when we are writing tests, when we are developing our code through the dev mode, that we can have always the tests running in the background for us, and we see exactly what's going on. Yeah. Quarkus is even so smart to know that if we would have multiple classes with multiple tests, or each class with its own test class, that it only reruns those tests that are set on this class. So we don't have to always run all tests, but we are only running those tests that are affected by the code changes we are making. Yeah? Which I think is a pretty nice feature. Quick question to Lucas. Do we have any questions already?
No, because you're just such an excellent educator. There are no questions. You see that you have a PhD. But we had a great hint in the beginning.
Yeah.
For when you really need to kill something on a port. Yeah, there's an npm tool called kill-port. Just enter the port and it disappears. Could really help in the workflow.
Yeah, that's true. Or the actual problem was that, for me at least, was that the port was used by a Docker container. Docker container is running under root rights. So if I make an ls off, or as normal user, I don't see the root ports used. So now, as we have seen a minute ago, when setting up the database, we had to manually run Flyway. Yeah. And we are going through this process right here to ease our use of our development environment. So for example, if I now go right down here and let's assume it's the end of the day, I'm going to shut down my computer. The deployment here is destroyed. Yeah. I'm going to shut down my Quarkus application. Now, next day, I come in the office, I start my deployment again, Docker compose. Let it come up, it's running. I'm going to start my Quarkus application again, and I'm ready for development. So come up. Come on, come on. Exactly, the application is running. And now I want to say, get a greeting, and I get this SQL grammar exception. Okay, I've forgotten to migrate the database, and that's a hassle. So I said that I want to have control over the migration in production, but for development, I don't really need this control, and I would rather have the comfort of Quarkus migrating the database for me when it starts up, but only for development. So let's look at the next commit. Again, we are going to add a dependency. In this case, it's Quarkus Flyway. So this is not the Flyway plugin. The Flyway plugin must be called explicitly. Quarkus Flyway is a dependency to call Flyway from Quarkus. In particular, what we are going to use to call Flyway or to execute Flyway on application startup. Yeah, that's the second part we are going to edit. We are going to say, when we are using the dev profile, then Flyway migrate at startup true. So let's go forward to this commit, check out revision. And hopefully, when we are going to curl right now, yeah, okay, Quarkus doesn't want to restart. So we restart it once manually. We should now see when it's restarting that we are that the database is migrated. We are going to get a log message. For this, come on. So application is starting up. And now we see exactly creating schema, history table public, current version of, migrating schema to. And now Quarkus migrated the schema for me at the startup. So now I can go back to my application, say, okay, curl all the greetings. The database is configured in a way that's ephemeral, so we don't see any data because it was thrown away when I stopped the containers. But now I could, for example, let me see, post a new salutation, get all salutations, and everything is working fine. So just one little more of automation to ease my development. So we already have our database and our pgadmin4 in a container. Next logical step is to move our application, so the application we are developing into a container as well. For this, we are just going to let me go forward and let me show it in the actual editor. I think that's easier to see. For this, we are going to provide a new deployment, a greeting deployment. As base image, I'm going to use an adopt OpenJDK. That's not relevant. I'm going to open ports 8080 and 5005. And the interesting bit is right here. So I'm going to mount the parent directory of local deployment, meaning this directory right here, our project structure, into the container as read-write. And I'm going to start this deployment exactly as we did before with Quarkus dev. One little hint, we have to set the debug host to 0000 and the HTTP host to 0000. We will see why in a second. Now, let me stop the Quarkus deployment right here. And let me deploy this stack. We already have 2 of our 3 services running in Docker. We have now the 3rd service, our Quarkus deployment running in Docker. So you see it's building. It should be relatively fast and start up soon. Okay, that's the files compiled exactly. And now, come on, start up. Now the application is running in Docker. And we have the same features as before, meaning I can again change my code right here, change it right here, save it. I can now curl for John %20 Doe. And I should get my default greeting. Hello, John Doe. And again, if I change this to hi, John Doe, execute the same command again, we see hot reload is still working. Why is it working? Because we are sharing the code repository with a container. And inside the container, the Quarkus process is still able to pick up the changes and to reprocess, recompile. One neat feature.
We've got a question in the comment, and I think the question just deserves to be heard right now.
Okay.
Look at the chat. What the what?
What the what?
What the what? I think there's a lot of black magic going on here, right? Cool tool.
Yeah, it is black magic, but on the other hand, it does exactly what you think it's doing. So Quarkus just listens on the files, sees changes, recompiles. And the nice thing about this is it's fast. So we are starting up in maybe 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, but that's max. So you see here, redeployment took 1 second. Yeah, and that's the nice thing about Quarkus. And now let me show you why we opened 2 ports, so 8080 and 5005. We can also connect our debugger. I pre-configured this here just to see, to show you there's nothing up my sleeve. I have a debug connection on port 5005. And I can just say debug, it connects. Now I can set, let's say, a breakpoint right here. Yeah. Oh, let's set it there. Let me re-execute my curl commando. And my debugger is working. So I don't only have hot reloading for my code, I also have my debug connection. And now everything is running in a Docker environment that hopefully is very similar to my final environment we are going to move to shortly, and that's the environment in the IBM cloud. So not many steps left in my commit history. I'm going to jump over this one here. That's just to get a little bit more code. We are not interested in code in itself. The next step is, right now we are sharing the code repository through a volume mount. We can also use a Docker image to start up our development. So instead of force checkout, instead of mounting our code volume, we are going to build our own image, yeah, through the process of Quarkus. Quarkus has tools for this, and we are going to start this image. Yeah, we lose the excuse me. We are going to lose the hot reload feature, at least for a second, but I will show you how we can re-enable this. So let me destroy my greeting right here. And let me redeploy it through the container image. Remember, this here is a container image. A container image normally is immutable. So we are not able to change to share the code repository with this image. Instead, we are going to just start this image. And we are going to use a slightly different tool for Quarkus development. We are going to use, let me see, not Quarkus dev, but Quarkus remote dev. So the container should be up and running. Quarkus remote dev, there's Quarkus remote dev. It's working almost the same like Quarkus dev. The only difference is we are going to point it, that's what we are seeing right here, to a remote URL. Yeah, and the application here has to be configured in a special way. We are going to take a look in a second. And instead of sharing, or instead of hot reloading via files, we are now going to hot reload over HTTP. So over an HTTP connection, this Maven process is communicating with the application running in our Docker container. And again, we can start curling our application, John Doe, for example, %20 John Doe. We see here, hello John Doe. Yeah. Now we are going to go back to our IDE and say again, we don't want a hello, we want a hi. Yeah. Remember, application is running Docker. Maven is Quarkus dev mode is communicating via HTTP with our application and is going to transmit the code over the HTTP connection back to the server. Now we see hi John Doe. Yeah. This step is a preparation step for the final task we are going for the final step we are going to make right now. because I have a little something prepared for you. That's this here is OpenShift-cluster running in the IBM cloud. And as you can see, I've deployed my Postgres, I've deployed my application right here. Yeah. This application is exposed over a root, so it's publicly available. And instead of connecting to my local instance that's running in my Docker Compose file, I can also connect to the remote instance. So I can now go over here, take this little command right here. This again is a Quarkus remote dev command, but instead of pointing it to localhost, we are now going to point it against the remote server. Yeah, that's a server running in the OpenShift cluster. We are going to start this. In the meantime, I'm going to get my port forward. What I'm going to get now is a port forward for my is a port forward for my debug connection. So I want to say port forward of port 5005 remote to 5005 locally. Yeah. Let's see if this worked. We can close this one. Oh, you cannot close this up. Here we are connected, yeah, through the OpenShift cluster. Now let me connect my debugger. Sometimes it's okay. Right now it doesn't want to. Exactly because I set up the port forward wrong. I have to forward to port 5005. Let me fix this. Okay, delete ports, port forward. I want to forward port 5000 to port 5005. And now let me connect my debugger. So debugger is connected. Maven, or Quarkus remote dev, is communicating with my OpenShift deployment. And again, I have set a breakpoint right here. I am going to fire up a curl command against the cluster. Curl, let me get the right command. That is this one right here. John %20do. So you see, this is actually running against the cluster, not locally, not in Docker, but against the cluster. I'm going to fire up this command. And we see IntelliJ noticed the debug connection. I can here see what the value actually is. John Doe was received. Okay. Continue execution. And again, I can say, no, I don't want hello. I want hey, hey, hey. Let me recurl. Now the changed code is transmitted to the OpenShift application. I see again, the debug request is coming in right here with John Doe. And when I continue execution, I see, hey, hey, hey. So my application is actually, my application I'm developing right now is actually running in OpenShift cluster remotely. And I am able to submit my code changes to the OpenShift cluster, to the running application, and also have a debug connection. And that thing I think is pretty cool. And you can imagine you can also use this technology not only for development, but for example, for troubleshooting purposes. If you have certain scenarios you want to debug, you can use a tool like Istio to route requests to a special debug pod, connect to this debug pod, change code in the debug pod, and see the results immediately. So that's the live demo I have prepared. Are there any questions?
There is a question. Yes, of course. People are very interested, but also there's a comment. Cool. Yeah. Just cool. I'd say it's witchcraft, but okay. Yeah, it's still very cool. And we've got a question that's not directly related to the talk, but still very interesting. Hi, did you try another languages in Quarkus, Scala, Kotlin, etc.? If yes, what is your experience with it?
I did not yet. I would like to try Kotlin. I know that Kotlin is quite well supported. I'm not an expert on Scala though. I can tell you that there is a special guide, Quarkus Kotlin, describing how to use Kotlin in Quarkus. So it's one of the main focuses of the team, the Quarkus team, and Kotlin should be well supported. And the hot reload feature I showed should also be possible in Quarkus with Kotlin. No experience and no information on Scala though. Are there any more questions?
Not from the audience for now, but you know I've got a question.
Yeah.
I've got many questions. First question, I will share slides with everybody. Just to remember, roughly a year ago, our colleague Olaf did a talk about Kubernetes remote debugging. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's the difference? In which languages can we use? What's the different concept? Why is this better or cooler or just?
Okay, I would first of all, the talk Olaf gave was focused on debugging. Yeah, normally if we debug, we do not change. So we want to see what the application is doing, but we are not changing the application code itself. So that's one of the main differences between the approach Olaf take and the approach I am taking with Quarkus Dev and Quarkus Remote Dev. The other thing is Olaf did a more wholesome approach in the sense of it's not limited to Quarkus, but for this we have to use more tools. Yeah, you don't get remote debugging for free. You have to do a little bit for it. Yeah, and Quarkus comes for Quarkus applications built in with those tools. And in this instance, it's just using these tools in the right way to achieve what I want. So that's the main difference between Olaf's talk and the talk I gave today. Mm-hmm. My talk is focused on Quarkus and its dev mode and actually developing and changing the application. Olaf's talk is focused on debugging, not changing the application, but being more wholesome in the sense of I can support more applications, not only Quarkus applications.
Yeah, okay. We've got a comments for that. Just a comment, not a question.
Yeah.
It makes Spring DevTools really look primitive. Quite interesting, and thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main focus. That's the main point why I'm so delighted of using Quarkus DevTools or Quarkus Remote Dev, because Spring DevTools, okay, you can change the body of the method, but you cannot change the signature, you cannot change this, you cannot change that. And with Quarkus DevTools or Quarkus Remote Dev, you are able to change quite a lot. Yeah. So that's one of the key takeaways for me that I've taken away as I discovered Quarkus Dev and Remote Dev. Do you have more questions, or does the audience have more questions?
The audience does not have more questions. One of our attendees got kicked out by Zoom, and now we have to post all the links again, and the audience is helping.
Okay.
Yeah. So great developer community. Again, everybody's helping.
Great community.
Great community. Nice. Just amazing. When I look at the time, I think there's no more time for more questions.
There's one more, because maybe we have time for one more.
One more question.
There's one more in the Q&A, and it's saying...
Oh, in the Q&A. Oh, it just followed the chat. Oh, I'm so sorry. We did not use the QA today. Okay, let's use it. Question. When you deploy the app into the Kubernetes, are you referring cloud-based CI/CD, like Cloud Build or GCP, or any other way?
Actually, when you're looking in the GitHub repo, you will find Tecton pipelines defined. I defined them, I think, a month ago. I deployed the cluster for the implementation yesterday. One of the specifications, one of the custom resource definitions didn't want to install. Otherwise, I would have installed the application through Tecton. So yes, that's a cloud native approach, but an approach that's not vendor specific. Does this answer the question?
I see nobody typing. So this would be just in time. Yeah, clock just struck 5 in Munich.
Awesome.
Still nobody typing, though I think you have answered it sufficiently. Thanks, Marco. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Isabel. Thanks, everybody. It was great. It was really fun. I think everybody learned a lot. And next time I will try Killport.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.